Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Quantum Leap Season 1, Episode 15. The episode is to be called Ben Song for the Defense. We come to find that Ben is in 1985, New York, New York, even though, reasonably, for this episode, we would already have someone to go on and find out that the places of which they are to show upon this episode are not to actually match up with 1985. Because there are certain buildings that obviously had existed past that time, so they messed up somewhere. We would come to find that Ben is to be a public defender in this episode, immediately trying to figure out some case, of course, of which that he has no clue what the heck is even going on. We would come to have that Ben has leapt into Eleta Ramirez, and so Ben would also come to find that he is to have a lover named ATA Vicky Davis, and so it seems that the relationship is to be much of a secret, and so that I kind of find to be just kind of the interesting part of how this episode kind of plays out here, of them both going on and having some pillow talk between one another, and it seems to really affect Vicky's life as well as also possibly Ramirez's also. So because they're on kind of both, they're kind of on different sides of the coin here, and so we have them when they do talk any little thing about the case that they're on, that could easily kind of have them realize it's like, well, I have to win, well, so do I. So, moving on. So, we come to find that Ben is to be a very busy public defender because he has 183 open cases. We would go on having me have to state certain things about this episode kind of right out of the way to get them over and done with, because there's a lot to talk about in this episode. To me, this episode goes on and reminds me of the Doctor episode, where we go on to have Ben who has no clue what he's doing. He's consistently looking to a person for answers through this entire episode because Ben has no real clue. We end up having Ben, who is, instead of having Addison for help, is to seek out Jen as for most of this episode's assistance, because we come to find out that Ben in this or that Jen in this episode is to have a law degree, as well as also to have spent some time in a courtroom because of a hacker case. We have quite a bit of problems with how that is to kind of be played out in this episode. Hence, me both realizing that they are possibly retconning some stuff from the original Quantum Leap stuff, but we probably even have the original Quantum Leap show that at some point would even retcon itself, but still. But then also it seems that there is to be this goofy retcon thing that was to be doing something that they didn't do episodes ago in this series. So you're messing things up for either the convenience of a story or whichever. I don't get it. So let's go with this. We would come to find in the original Quantum Leap series that Al would be in a imaging chamber trying to go on and tell Sam hints about who he is. This is early on in season 1, and so, and this is the one episode where, of course, Sam is to be like the English lit teacher, and so Al is going on and is to be side by side with some people in the imaging chamber with him, and Al is trying to go on and tell Sam who he is. And when Al starts to go on and give Sam clues, we have these security guards that go on and drag Al off, stating that it seems that if anybody is to go into the imaging chamber, only Sam can still just see Al. We would then further on when, and I believe this is another episode where, I think I've already stated this at some point in the past, but we would go on to have Sam, who is talking to Al, And this is the part where he's in the mental hospital. He's not quite acting himself. He's acting like the person he's lived into. And so we will come to find that Al is talking to this woman that it seems Sam can see but not hear. So Al is going on and talking to this woman while talking to Sam, and they are figuring things out. And so maybe we can go on and state that at some point that they had perfected this, and you can go on and see and hear whoever is in the imaging chamber, regardless. But I think that that also is to realize how Addison is to not really and truly be a valuable person to this team, that they can just switch out anybody. And we even have in a scene where magic is going on and stating that Addison had been in the imaging chamber like 24/7. I'm like, well, she didn't even need to be, because anybody could have just jumped in at any time, because they state that here in this episode. But it also just goes on to just devalue Allison, which is a horrible thing, but it's the truth. Am I wrong? We would also go on and have a scene where both Jen and Addison are in the imaging chamber together. And we have all of a sudden where it seems that some kind of bizarre thing happens where it's starting to warp the hologram image of the both Addison and Jen in the imaging chamber together. And I would just go on and state, it's like, well, wait a minute. Wrong. We had episodes prior in this same series where Addison and Ian go off to watch an entire basketball game together, and neither one of Ian or Addison had a problem watching this game. And so, retcon already in its own season? You can just work that out to just be like, oh, well, like, they now had a problem because they were doing it too often, or some garbage. Like, come on, like, you are retconning something obviously that didn't need to be retconned in your show. You've messed up. You've effed up Quantum Leap. You messed it up. So, but that also leaves it kind of open to have other people come in and really be the guide for Ben in certain other stories. Like, it would be kind of cool if Magic could come in or Ian could come in, because maybe it ties into their own backstories. And because we've kind of technically done Magic before, technically, but still, we can go on and kind of do other things here with both the Ian and Magic characters. But anyways, moving on. So, with that said, I think it's about that time to just go into spoilers for this, because I've already been talking long enough about this teeing up fashion. So let's go on into that double five. I had watched this episode prior, but I was very ill the day before. So, like, for the life of me, I was trying to get this out yesterday, but I just couldn't get it. I just couldn't figure it out. Or I just couldn't just get it. So, with that said, let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time to spoil this episode. So, we've come to find Ben 1985. My bad. And Ben is to be Ramirez. So Ben is to be in this court case, and we would come to find that Ben is trying to help out Tyler Hamelin in this court, and we would kind of find out that the story of the Tyler character is that he was to have been kind of kicked out by his woman, and he was only in his underwear. So Tyler, of course, would not know where else to go. He would go on and find this car that he can open the car door to, and so Tyler goes into the car, falls asleep, and would end up being arrested and going to this courthouse the following time. So we'd have Ben who has to try to come up with some kind of defense, and Ben has absolutely nothing. He's just like, ah. So Ben, of course, would go on and realize that Tyler, almost in the buff with only him wearing underwear and handcuffs, there's no way that Ben could save Tyler. So we would come to find out that Ben is going to go to jail. We have immediately, when Ben makes it out of the of that time, we would come to find that Addison is to be with Ben, trying to figure out where exactly or who exactly Ben is, and they're trying to narrow it down. It's like, okay, you're a public defender in this court. We should be able to figure it out. So we all of a sudden have a character named Stuart who comes in after Sal goes on to tell, hey kid, or Saul tells him, hey kid, like, you should probably go on and go into the private scene instead of public, and then kind of walks off. So Addison comes in, and we have Ben who is kind of sloppily, like, monies to fall out of his case, and Addison's like, man, you're having a really rough day. And Ben's like, yeah, like, you have no idea. So they're trying to narrow this down. And so we go on to have Stuart, who is to come in, and he is to be this guy who is to have impounded his motorcycle. And so we have Ben that is to go on and be like, well, hey, it'll take a couple hours, but I will help you out. We immediately have Ben who forgets about it and goes on to another thing that he is going on and trying to do. So Ben, we come to find out, has to go into this room to talk to his client Diaz. We would kind of find out that Diaz is to relay to Ben that he didn't go on and do it. It seems that they are offering him up a 10-year deal to be able to get out of this, or to get like a minimal kind of sentence. And so Diaz is kind of, quite frankly, wanting to take this offer, and Addison is telling Ben, no, like, don't go on and have him do this. Like, we have to prove that he's innocent. So Ben is going on and asking Ben, it's like, well, hey, you didn't do it, right? And Diaz is like, well, no, but that doesn't matter. And so Ben is like, well, hey, like, if you didn't do this, then we're gonna fight this. So we have Ben who makes his way to court and is to talk to certain number of witnesses. And we have Ben who first off talks to this building manager, and then goes on and has like the police officer being questioned. So we come to find that Ben is to not want to take this deal, and so when Ben is to start to question the building manager, he ends up talking about, like, well, hey, like, could it be possible that this key could have gotten like stolen, or maybe some of your prior tenants could have come after you, and this and that. And so we would come to find out that the lawyer on the other side of things would be like, hey, that's speculation, and so we'd have things be ruled out. We would come to find that the lawyer on the other side of things is the ADA Bill Barnes. Bill, of course, goes on to question this police officer who is to have talked to Diaz right as Diaz was to be caught and arrested. And the police officer states that Diaz was to say, I didn't do it. And the police officer is like, for what? What are you talking about? We would have Diaz, who was to kind of look back at the building and to have probably known something about what he had gone on, or what had gone on in that building. So, making, of course, Diaz guilty, or seem guilty. So, they're not going on and they're not taking the deal of 10 years. So, we have Ben, who's just like, man, I'm out of my depth. There's no way for this is going to work out. We have, of course, Leo, who is Diaz's brother, that is going on and telling Diaz that his lawyer doesn't know his lawyer is clueless. So we end up having Ben, who is to immediately know what this guy had said. So we also, since Ben is wanting to try this case instead of just cutting a deal, we have this huge amount of files that Ben is going to have to rattle off in a very short, brief amount of time, and so he's just going on and stuck with this. So Addison is to, of course, run off and realize that she has no idea of how to work a court case or to really know what to really do here. And so we also come to find out that Ian is to have figured a way to track Leaper X with his leaping signature, which I was like, okay, that's a cool idea. Because, of course, if Ben is to have a leaping signature, so does Leaper X. It seems that every time that they are to go on and say the word Leaper X, people are to have to go on and have it be like a swear jar to where they're tossing all this money into it. So I'm like, okay, like, this is kind of really cool. I like what they're doing here. So we have Addison that is talking to the crew, and we would come to find that Addison's like, well, hey, Jen, like, you have a law degree, you've spent some time in court, you're in, like, switch hitter, and so on and so forth, or pitch hitter, baseball analogy, if you kind of get my drift. So we go on to have Ben, who is to leave this court case, and he is to be met by Addison and then Jen, going on and saying, like, okay, Jen is going to be working with you on the sleep because Addison is kind of out of her depth. We have the two of them that are in the same spot together in the imaging chamber, and all of a sudden the holograms start to flicker and start to static out. We have Addison that realizes, yeah, I should be probably getting out of here because for some reason this is not working. So we would come to find that Jen is going on to help out Ben here. And in my eyes, also, this technically does go on and help us if there ever is a COVID situation, with the exclusion of, well, even if we go on and we do have Ben, who is to have left because maybe he contracted COVID, they can do a whole Leaper X episode and just have whoever Addison is to be in that episode could go on and help out Leaper X. So maybe that could be a whole episode if that ends up happening. Or maybe they could figure out what to do to try and get around the fact that Ben is to not be on the show for a week or two or whichever. You would have thought like somebody would have had to have brainchild that for whatever goofy reason. But anyways, moving on. So maybe it would have to be a whole episode where like all the other characters would have to do these stories. Or maybe they would make it a whole Janice focused episode. I don't know. We'll figure it out when it comes to that. Still trying to figure it out. But anyways, moving on. We go on to have Ben, who is talking about how that case kind of went sour, and that he doesn't know if he could really take this case on or not. And Vicky Davis comes in and is like, well, like, I hope you do. And so we have the two of them being all smoochy by these vending machines, and so Vicky is going on and telling Ben, it's like, well, hey, like, it seems that me and you are going to have quite a bit of work, but it'll feel like in the past when we were in college together. And so we come to find out that Ben has a love interest. So that works out. That whole scene right there, interesting. But again, there's some retconning things going on. So we would come to find that Ben is scrambling all over the place. He has to be everywhere in a certain amount of minutes and whichever. But so we would come to find out as they are to supposedly have Ben be getting information from this case. We have all these files that are to be handed over by Ian and Magic and whoever to try and help Ben, like, kind of condense this kind of file of information for this case. So we go on and find out with Ian and Magic and everybody from behind the scenes that there, of course, was to be a person that was to be on one of these pieces of papers that was to be somehow, like, black markered off for some reason. We would go on and have Ian, with certain editing technology, figure out that the edited person was to actually be Edwin Soto. So we would come to find out that Soto is to be connected to not only this case, but two other cases. And so at that time, and so the guys are like, okay, like, this is our lead, and we now have to try and figure out that why is it that these people didn't have this paperwork to have given Ben in the past. So we would have Ben, and here's where we're gonna get through some of the side quests, and then we'll get back to that whole Edward Soto thing and him going on and talking to Vicky here when they're together. So Ben goes on to talk to Tyler's woman, girlfriend Rose. Rose is to go on and need $5,000 worth of bail money for Tyler. She's like, well, how am I going to get this kind of money? And so, of course, Ben is like, well, I don't have that kind of money. So since Jen is now in Addison's place, Jen immediately is like, well, hey, how about we use the sports almanac? And since we know, like, kind of horse races and whatever that are going to happen, and it's a surefire win, we can have Rose, who is to win this money, to bail out Tyler, because Tyler needs to be desperately bailed out or he's going to die in prison. So we have Ben that goes on to give Rose this tip, and it's going to tell her, it's like, well, hey, like, yeah, like, you go on and bid for this horse. So we come to find out later, when Tyler is to be bailed out and is with his girlfriend Rose, and things seemingly are working out, we have Ben, who is in this elevator with them, and we have Tyler, who comes to Ben. It's like, well, hey, like, do you think that you can go on and kind of help us out a little bit more? It's like, hey, man, like, we're struggling, and it would be nice if you can go on and give us another tip. And Ben is like, no, like, the only tip that I'm going to go on and give you is come to court on time. And he walks off. So that kind of concludes that story. So we would come to find that Ben, who, of course, is to forget about the character Stuart, the biker guy. We would go on to find that Stuart is desperately sleeping at this courthouse to again talk to Ben here. And when Ben is to be confused about why Stuart is kind of sleeping on the side of this building, we have Stuart that goes on and says, like, I need that bike. It's my only ride. And also, like, it's this ride for this fundraiser for my uncle, and it's an AIDS ride. And so Ben is like, okay, I'll go on and help you. So when Ben finally does go on and help with Stuart, that ties into a time where Ben is going to need Stewart's help to drive to this one location to help this out with the Diaz case. Because they're kind of using the sports almanac thing to try and figure out from the future how it is that Edwin Soto was to have gone on and done these murders in the future. So because like this guy is going to go down for 2 other cases anyways, but so moving on. Kind of clearing all the side quests out of the way to get to the more pressing story here. So we have Ben, who now is to be talking to Jen, and so Jen is telling Ben that that Ben needs to tell Vicky or ask her. It's like, well, hey, why didn't you give me Edwin Soto when I should obviously like. They're having to realize that maybe Vicky Davis was withholding this information on purpose, like they were trying to balk, or that maybe it just was simply a mistake. So, and Ben has to confront Vicky about it. So, Ben then goes on to be with Vicky, and it seems things are all really going very nice, lovey-dovey, whatever. So, Ben ends up going on and realizing that like Jen's like, come on, like we got to get to this, like look into her files, and instead of having Ben like snoop into Vicky's stuff, Ben just flat out confronts Vicky with it, and it's like, well, hey, like, did you not go on and give me the paper telling me about Edwin Soto? And Vicky's like, well, did you go through my things? And Ben's like, no, but I heard about it, or I know about it. So Vicky goes on and is to tell Ben that was definitely not to have been done on purpose, and like it seems that Ben was actually and truly convinced about all this. And so we then go on to have Ben, who has to go and confront Bill Barnes with their judge. And so Ben goes on to talk about how there is a name missing on this piece of paper, and that maybe these people are concealing certain bits of evidence. And so Bill Barnes does go on and give them the piece of paper with this information, but bizarrely now there is a name on this paperwork missing. And so Ben, who of course is very tempted to say something, but Jen is like, do not. Like you'll get disbarred, like don't do this. And so Ben is to have to take the paperwork, realizing that like Bill is continuing to lie to them. So, or continuing to hide the truth about this case so he can win. He is that desperate, or that that scumbaggery, if that is even a word. So we would come to find that Ben is to be talking to Vicky, and it seems that Vicky was to get fired by Bill because Bill figured it out. So we are going on to have Jen, who's like possibly telling us that like, yeah, like it's never gonna work out for Vicky. She's gonna go back to like Kentucky or something like that. And so Ben is like, man, like I've already ruined this girl's relationship, but then also like I'm possibly also gonna like ruin my career, or this woman's career that he's leapt into. So Ben is trying to figure out what the heck to do here, and is trying to figure out the right things to do. So Ben is to go on, and so Ben is to talk to Diaz about Edwin Soto. And we have Diaz who's like, well, hey, that name doesn't really sound all that familiar. And oh no, wait, I also have to talk about this also. We would come to find out that uh, Diaz's brother Leo had also got arrested, and Leo was talking to Ben about how uh, if Diaz really says anything about this case, and kind of points fingers at anybody, that Diaz could possibly be ruled in the future as a snitch, and like they might not be able to trust Diaz in the future and probably want to kill him. And so there's kind of like that kind of going on in this story. But so Ben goes on and is talking to Diaz like, well, hey, like what happened to my brother? And Ben's like, oh yeah, he just got arrested, but it's fine. So Ben is talking to Diaz, and so they're talking about Edwin Soto, and so for Diaz, that name doesn't sound familiar, but then Ben shows him a picture, and then Diaz is like, oh my god, yeah, I know this guy. I saw him in the building before, like that day. And so Ben is like, okay, all right. So, like, you placed him at the scene. Like, Diaz isn't technically eyewitness to Edwin actually being there, so there's some truth to this. So we have to go on and have Ben, who is to, with Stewart's help, go off to try and figure out where possibly this smoking gun could have been with whoever his prints are to be on it. And so Ben needs to go back to this complex, and he is to use this information from Jen to go on and figure out where this smoking gun is. So Ben goes off with Stewart, and Ben is telling Stewart, like, hey, come with me, you're my witness. So they go into this place, they are looking through these vents to find this gun, and we have Stewart who finds it, not Ben. And so Ben is telling Stewart, hey, don't grab the gun or whatever, because your prints will be on it, and so on and so forth. So we have Ben who's taking a lot of these pictures, and then we come to find out that Ben is to kind of bring this in as evidence, kind of using feature information to figure out where the gun really was. So we then go on and turn around here, and we have Bill Barnes who is talking to Ben. And I know there's another Saul scene like in here somewhere, but I don't know what the dialogue that they talk about is, or what it is that they go on and they state a second time around. But so we have Ben who is talking to Bill Barnes, and we have them state now, it's like, well, hey, like, I'll still have Diaz go to prison, but it'll only be for 4 years. I'll make a deal with you. And Ben is like, no, he didn't go on and do it. Like, we have, like Edwin Soto, like, and Barnes is just like, well, yeah, but, like he's attached to 2 other cases that I'm working on, so, like, I'll cut you a break. Like, 4 years for Diaz. So we have Ben who goes to Diaz for 4 years, or with 4 years of prison time. And we have Jen who's like, well, hey, if Diaz takes his 4 years, Ben, you can leap. And Ben is like, no, he is innocent. And also Ben is realizing that that's not going to go on and help Diaz's family in the long run. That the best for Diaz is to be free of these charges, and that they should go on there and just fight for this. So we have Ben that goes on to talk to Diaz about the 4 years, and Diaz is like, well, like, if I take these 4 years, like, it'll be good. It's either 4 years or 30, and that's what he's kind of looking at. And so like Diaz is really just like, I don't know. And so we have Ben who is with Jen, and they're both kind of like, man, like this is all just like not working out. Like what can we really do here? And so Jen comes up with this goofy story about this person who is to go on and see all these rabbits getting killed. And we would come to find out that that story would actually be a magic story that Magic was to go on and have. And by the time that Ben goes on and is to talk to Addison again, by the end of this episode, we have Addison who's like, oh my god, Ben, you remember who Magic is? And Ben is like, well, yeah, I guess I do. And so it's kind of funny enough where Jen would just be upset by the end of the episode. It's like, dude, I was with him that whole entire time, but like one goofy story, and like he remembers who Magic is. Like I thought that was hilarious. So we have Ben, and so they're willing to go on and roll the dice on this case to just like, no, like we're not going to take the 4 years. We want him to be innocent. So when Ben goes on to go to one of his court cases and comes out of it, we would come to find that Vicky is kind of waiting there. And so Vicky's like, well, hey, I found out in a number of other cases that Bill was kind of being crooked in a lot of those other cases. And so that's going to get him like fired and disbarred and whatever. He's going to lose his lawyer's license. And so I'm like, all right, Vicky, all right, yeah, woo. Book him, Dano, do it. So Vicky was to do something great here. So we have Vicky who goes on and is to meet Ben in this bathroom and is to tell him all about this and give him, she was to, there's a whole bathroom scene where they realize that like they're going to be together, and that Ben goes on and is talking to Vicky. It's like, well, hey, like, did we move our anniversary dinner to Saturday? And Vicky gives her this little brooch, and so Ben goes on to go into the courtroom to defend Diaz. So immediately when Ben goes on to walk in his courtroom to defend Diaz, he all of a sudden then leaps. So instead of going on and getting, of course, Ben to get the relay of how all of this had gotten solved, we instead go back to the behind the leap scene where Addison is telling Jen, it's like, well, hey, like, you do the honors and you tell us, like, what had happened to all of these characters. So Jen goes on and rattles off that everything did work out in the end for Diaz, that he was to have been not guilty for this case, and that Diaz and his family, everything worked out, and we would go on and find out that, yeah, like, Barnes did get disbarred and whatever for his crooked ways, and that eventually Ramirez and Vicky did work out, all this and that and whatever have you. So, happy ending had by all. So, with that said, that does go on and technically wrap up this episode. I apologize for how long it took, but at the end of the day also, this is a lot to just try and figure out or remember or whichever. And also, I was trying to put the pieces together of where things actually were, because there was a lot going on. Going from one court case to another and trying to figure all these pieces out. But other than that, I think it's in fact that time to just call it a wrap. Let me know in the comments below if there's something that I heavily forgot about. I'm sure there was bits of dialogue or things here and there where I was just like, I don't remember. But yeah, wasn't that bad of an episode. I want to go on and see. Oh, where do we leap to next? We have Ben who where did he go on and leap? Oh, he is to be in a seemingly mental hospital, and he is with this woman that is going on and talking to this doctor, and it seems that this doctor is going to put Ben through some procedures, and that's very vague, but also I'll probably know a lot more within the following week of what this episode really is, or whenever the episode I get it next. So, with that said, I'm going to go on and just get out of here. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything else I forgot about. So, with that said, goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.